My dear, at the age of 62, I still remember the memories of the past as if they happened just yesterday. Back then, I was a 20-year-old girl, full of dreams and innocent faith in life. I believed that as long as I studied hard, education would be the key to escape poverty and change my life. But life doesn't always go as planned. I once thought that bringing my 9-year-old goddaughter to live with me was an act of love, a decision from the heart. Who would have thought that this very choice would become the turning point that steered my life in an entirely different direction? I still vividly remember Emma's eyes the first time she saw the sea from the window of our small apartment. Those blue eyes sparkled with wonder, brimming with tears of emotion. In that moment, I truly believed I was doing the right thing. But as time went by, everything turned out to be far more complicated than I had imagined. I lived through years filled with a mixture of love, betrayal, and painful secrets buried deep beneath the dust of time. Today, I want to share with you everything I have gone through, and this is the true story of my life, not a fiction. I hope you will and feel it with your heart. I still remember as vividly as if it were yesterday the day I first met Michael. It was 1985. I had just turned 20. I was born into a poor family. At that time, I believed there was only one way to escape poverty: to study hard. I dedicated myself entirely to my studies. I trained as an executive secretary, the profession every respectable young woman aspired to at that time. It wasn't easy by any means. The countless nights I spent awake studying after work were grueling, but I managed to graduate through sheer determination and perseverance. The moment I obtained my diploma, I secured a position at a prestigious real estate company in Miami. Goodness, how important I felt, dressed in my finest clothes purchased from the church bazaar frequented by the wealthy. My style consisted of a simple suit with a skirt and impossibly thin high heels. I spent my days seated behind that secretary's desk, feeling like I had finally arrived. It was at this company that I encountered Michael Anderson. My heavens, what a man he was, tall with a smile that illuminated the entire room and those mesmerizing green eyes like twin emeralds. When he looked at me, the ground seemed to vanish beneath my feet. Michael was the company owner's son. Just imagine, while I came from a family that could barely afford to put food on the table, he had been swimming in wealth since childhood. Having just graduated with a business administration degree from an elite university, he was there learning the family business. Initially, I was intimidated. I assumed he would be one of those arrogant playboys who look down on people like me, but I couldn't have been more wrong. Michael was refreshingly different, educated and gentle. He treated everyone with equal respect, from the janitor to the manager. The other young women at the office had their eyes on him, just as I did, but in my mind, it was nothing more than a daydream. The first meaningful conversation we shared occurred during the company's year-end party. I was standing in a corner, feeling shy and uncertain. Suddenly, he appeared beside me with 2 glasses of soda, offering one to me as he initiated conversation. We talked through the entire evening, discovering numerous shared interests. We enjoyed the same music and films. He laughed at my jokes and made me feel truly special. From that day forward, everything changed. Michael consistently found reasons to pass by my desk, always with a different pretext, bringing an Americano, delivering a document, and I, naive and delighted, completely smitten, had no idea what lay ahead. We began a clandestine relationship. Michael insisted on keeping it secret from everyone at the company. He claimed it was for my protection, and truthfully, he was right. His father, Richard, was a stern man who believed poor people were only good for labor. His mother, Barbara, was even worse. She carried herself with her nose perpetually in the air, as if detecting an unpleasant odor. Michael stood apart from them. He would take me for drives in his Ford Mustang, a vehicle of pure luxury. I can still recall the scent of new leather and the smooth feel of those seats. We would sneak off to Starbucks and restaurants on the outskirts of town. It was thrilling, but Richard eventually discovered us. Good Lord, what a day that was. I was convinced I would lose my job on the spot. The old man stormed to my desk, his face crimson with rage, looking as though he might explode. But then, something unforgettable happened. Michael, that handsome young man, positioned himself between us, looked his father squarely in the eyes, and declared firmly, "Dad, if Sarah leaves, I leave too. Girl?" It was as if time stood still. Everyone in the office watched open-mouthed. No one could believe what was happening. Michael was publicly declaring his feelings for me. Richard turned pale. His only son, the apple of his eye, was standing up to him because of me. I trembled like a leaf, uncertain of what would happen next. Michael took my hand and gazed into my eyes, right there in front of everyone. He demonstrated that he wasn't ashamed of me, that he was willing to confront his father for us. In that moment, I felt something profound in my chest, a warmth, a joy tinged with fear. It was love, dear, a love that had taken root deep within me. We spent 2 years together, weathering ups and downs. Michael was always my defender, constantly by my side. We shared a genuine love, the kind you typically only see in romantic films. He introduced me to a world I never knew existed: elegant restaurants, designer clothing, experiences entirely new to me. When he proposed, I nearly fainted. It happened during a candlelit dinner, complete with an 18-karat gold ring. I said yes without hesitation. Our wedding was quite the event. The social elite mingled with my humble family. I felt like royalty. After the ceremony, Richard pulled me aside. I braced myself for a lecture, but he surprised me. He embraced me tightly and said, "Take good care of my boy." It was the first time he had treated me as an equal, as family. Richard then presented us with an extraordinary gift: a beachfront apartment. Not just any beach, but in Tampa, where they were establishing a new branch office. The plan was for Michael to manage this location. Our honeymoon was magical. We traveled to Hawaii. Imagine him, who had never left the country, suddenly walking along those breathtaking beaches, gazing at an azure sea that seemed almost unreal. We spent 2 idyllic weeks there, living what felt like a fairy tale. Upon our return, reality awaited. We moved into the beach apartment, a haven of luxury ocean views, exquisite furniture, nothing but the finest. I could hardly believe it all belonged to us. Michael assumed leadership of the new office, and I became his executive secretary. Working for my husband felt strange, but we functioned well together. He trusted my judgment and allowed me to make significant decisions. I felt valued. Life seemed perfect. We had fulfilling careers, a beautiful home, and each other. Weekends were particularly wonderful. We would visit the beach, host barbecues with our new friends. What a delightful group they were. In the evenings, we would sit on the veranda watching the sunset. Such a breathtaking sight. We would linger there, sipping wine and talking. Those were moments of pure tranquility. You know, Michael was truly thoughtful. He taught me to drive, even though I was terrified at first. He showed the patience of Job, remaining by my side and offering encouragement. On my birthday, oh my goodness, I was completely taken aback. Michael surprised me with a gift beyond my wildest dreams: a brand new Cadillac DeVille. That car epitomized luxury, similar to his own but with an even more sophisticated finish and a powerful V6 engine. It purred like a dream. At that time, the DeVille was the car everyone coveted, the pinnacle of American automotive engineering. I can still picture myself standing there, keys in hand, scarcely able to believe it. The car gleamed in the sunlight, adorned with an enormous bow on the hood, as Michael presented me with the keys, flashing that beautiful smile of his. I trembled with emotion. The first time I drove, it felt like floating on clouds: the supple leather seat, the responsive steering wheel, that distinctive new car aroma. It was a dream realized. I thought to myself, this is it. I've made it. Oh, how content I was then. I believed I had completely transformed my life, leaving poverty firmly in the past. Each morning, I awoke filled with gratitude for all my blessings. But life always has its own plans. One day, I began experiencing unusual symptoms: nausea, dizziness. Initially, I attributed it to work-related fatigue, but when my monthly cycle didn't arrive, my heart raced. Effective pharmacy tests weren't widely available then. I visited the doctor, a bundle of anxiety and hope. When he confirmed it, I could barely contain tears of joy. I was pregnant. When I told Michael, he lifted me into the air, laughing like a child. "I'm going to be a father, Sarah," he exclaimed. At that moment, I felt my happiness was complete. I continued working, naturally. It wasn't easy, I assure you. The nausea would strike during meetings, occasionally forcing me to dash to the bathroom, but I was determined. I wanted to prove I could balance motherhood and career. Then, in 1990, Ethan arrived, our beautiful, chubby baby boy. My God, that moment when the doctor placed that tiny bundle in my arms, I experienced a love I never knew existed. Michael wept like a baby himself, completely enamored with his son. Ethan was the spitting image of his father, with those same captivating green eyes. Watching my husband holding our child, I thought, this is perfection. My life is complete. Ah, my dear, I remember it as though it were yesterday. Ethan was just 15 days old when my family visited. My father, Robert, and my mother, Mary bless them, were absolutely enchanted. He was their first grandchild. They couldn't stop doting on him. My 3 brothers came too. They were younger than me, still single but grown men. They joked about teaching their nephew to play ball someday. We gathered in the living room, drinking coffee and enjoying that apple pie that only my mother could make properly. Conversation flowed, everyone eager for updates. I sat with little Ethan in my arms, trying to participate in everything. I was being extremely careful with my diet. Mom was full of advice. My daughter, she would say, "Be careful with this, avoid that. Don't eat this, it gives the baby colic." I listened attentively, trying to follow every instruction. I wanted to do everything right for my baby, and it wasn't just about Ethan. Mom kept insisting, "Sarah, you need to get your pre-baby figure back quickly so you don't lose your husband." Can you imagine? She wanted me to purchase high-waisted underwear and even Spanx to flatten my stomach. As she elaborated on her theories, I thought, well, if Mom says so, I should listen. I decided to follow her advice, for better or worse. My dear, my mother was truly remarkable. She had raised 4 children and remained slender. No one would believe that woman had given birth multiple times. I was in awe and wanted to emulate her. And wouldn't you know it, in the midst of all this conversation, with everyone talking simultaneously, enjoying apple pie and coffee, Mom mentioned Jennifer. When I heard her say Jennifer's name, my heart leaped. Immediately, my curiosity was piqued. "Remember your cousin Jennifer, Sarah?" she asked. How could I forget? Jennifer had been my closest childhood friend. We played together constantly, had sleepovers, but life had taken us in different directions. My mother continued, "She's going through difficult times. She's expecting her 4th child, in her 2nd marriage. Things aren't easy for her." My heart constricted. We grow up, follow separate paths, but the affection remains. "Dearest cousin," I inquired about little Emma, my goddaughter. Oh, how I adored that child. I remembered her as a tiny thing, so full of life, running through Jennifer's house. What happened was that I had chosen education, dedicating myself to study. I spent countless nights hunched over textbooks, dreaming of a better future. My parents, Robert and Mary, were relentless. "Sarah, study hard. Education is the key to everything in life," they repeatedly told me and my brothers. I obeyed. Deep down, I believed they didn't want me to end up like them. Meanwhile, Jennifer became involved with a local boy. His name was Kevin, the son of Mr. Jones, who owned the store. Life had separated us. While my parents pushed me toward academic achievement, poor Jennifer lacked that encouragement. Her mother, my Aunt Linda, may she rest in peace, was my mother's sister who had sadly passed away early. Her father, Uncle Frank, was an old-fashioned man with no interest in education. He wanted Jennifer at home washing, ironing, cooking. "Women don't need education, they need to know how to keep house," he would declare. Consequently, Jennifer's prospects and dreams diminished. Before we knew it, Jennifer found herself pregnant. It caused quite an uproar in the family. If Aunt Linda had been alive, she would have been shocked. Uncle Frank nearly collapsed when he heard. "Oh, my daughter, God help me. What a disgrace," he lamented, crossing himself. To avoid becoming the subject of town gossip, Kevin agreed to take responsibility for the child. They quickly moved in together. There was no church wedding or ceremony, but they lived as husband and wife. They settled in Uncle Frank's house, a modest brick structure, but it was what they had. The uncle, with his characteristically grumpy demeanor, eventually accepted the situation. "What's done is done," he grumbled. Little Emma grew up in that environment. She played in the yard, chased the chickens, climbed trees in the backyard. Occasionally, I would send small gifts, a doll, hair ribbons. I hoped that, despite the challenges, Jennifer would raise her well. Their life wasn't easy. Kevin worked in the fields, earning meager wages that barely covered expenses, but they managed as best they could. My mother's expression grew somber as she said, "Oh, my daughter, things aren't going well. Emma doesn't get along with her stepfather. She's suffering terribly, poor thing." I was devastated. How could this be? No child deserves a cruel stepfather. My heart ached. I didn't understand. I asked my mother, but Emma's father seemed to love Jennifer so much. What happened? Why did they separate, Mom? My mother shook her head sadly. He betrayed her daughter. He left with another woman, abandoning Jennifer and the children. I was speechless. How could a man do such a thing? Abandon his family like that? And Emma, so young, having to deal with all this, a hostile stepfather. At that moment, I felt something strange in my chest, a mixture of anger, sadness, and an urgent desire to take action. I couldn't leave my goddaughter in such a situation. She deserved better. I kept thinking, what if Michael and I could help? We had a comfortable life, a spacious apartment. Perhaps Emma could come live with us temporarily. I glanced at Ethan's crib, my newborn baby. I thought that maybe Emma could even help me with him. It seemed like an arrangement that would benefit everyone. Oh, if only I had known. If I could turn back time. But we never know what fate has in store, do we? At that moment, I simply wanted to help. I had no idea that decision would change everything. Absolutely everything. After my mother told me about Emma, I couldn't stop thinking about it. That night, Michael and I discussed it. I thought bringing the girl to live with us was a wonderful idea. I explained how we could make a positive difference in her life. But then came the part that gave me pause. Michael suggested putting Ethan in daycare. He reasoned that once our son was a bit older, we would have the freedom to continue our travels and outings. "If Emma lives with us," he explained, "we'll need to include her in everything. We can't leave a young girl alone." I gazed at Ethan's crib, contemplating. Our life had already transformed dramatically since his birth. Part of me yearned for that freedom again, but another part worried. What about Emma? How will she adjust to living with us? I imagined the girl alone at home while we went out enjoying ourselves. It didn't seem right. "Michael," I said, "our life is already different because of Ethan. I don't think bringing Emma will change things that significantly." He remained silent for a moment, then agreed. "You're right, Sarah. We'll find a way. The important thing is to help the girl." At that moment, I believed I was making the right decision. That God had placed Emma in our path for a reason. We decided to welcome Emma into our home. I was excited, already envisioning how it would be the girl helping with Ethan, all of us together like one happy family. Now, I'd like to hear your perspective. Would you invite your goddaughter to live with your family if you were financially comfortable, or would you simply provide financial assistance? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to know what you think, and I'll respond with a heart. Your opinion matters greatly to me. Let me tell you something interesting. Michael's parents, those formal individuals, also came to visit their grandson. What joy that was! They were absolutely delighted. Barbara, maintaining her sophisticated air, made elaborate plans for little Ethan. "We'll take him to Disney," Richard announced proudly. "And to Europe as well," Barbara added with her characteristic refined manner. "Our precious grandson will see the entire world," they proclaimed, as if everything was already arranged. Michael and I were amazed by their enthusiasm. They discussed international travel as casually as if they were planning a trip to the corner store. I admit, at that moment, I felt warmth toward them. After all, what mother doesn't enjoy seeing her child pampered? It was heartwarming to see Ethan receiving such adoration, even if delivered in their somewhat excessive style. After my recovery period, Michael and I decided to bring Emma from Jennifer's house. It was at my insistence, you see. I was concerned about her relationship with her stepfather, and I eventually convinced Michael. When we arrived, my heart sank. Everything was so modest, so basic. The house's interior plaster was crumbling. The old, patched furniture barely stood upright. Jennifer, poor thing, was embarrassed to receive us in such humble circumstances, but we pretended not to notice to spare her further discomfort. I glanced at Michael and saw that he, too, was affected. In that moment, I felt certain we were doing the right thing by bringing Emma to live with us. Jennifer was initially overjoyed to see us. We embraced tightly, as if the years had never separated us. Little Emma had just turned 9 years old. I looked at her and saw a thin little girl with large, inquisitive eyes, even prettier than I remembered. She didn't recognize me. There was a photograph of us in the living room from when she was 3 years old. I showed it to her. "Look, Emma, that's me holding you." Uncle Frank arrived, pleased to see us. He treated everyone cordially, offering us Americano coffee. He knew how to brew a good cup. We conversed back and forth, explaining the purpose of our unexpected visit. Jennifer, bless her heart, was a good mother. You could see the love in her eyes, but life wasn't easy. She understood that at that moment, the best thing for Emma would be to come live with me. So we talked and formulated a proposal. We would help Jennifer by sending her money monthly. In exchange, little Emma would come live with me and help as a babysitter. Additionally, part of that money would be saved for her future. I promised the best education for her. Jennifer was thrilled with the possibility of providing a better life for her daughter. She spoke so proudly of Emma, praising the girl highly. "Emma is incredibly capable," Jennifer said, beaming with pride. "She knows how to perform all household tasks. She's very tidy. She cares for her 3 younger siblings like an adult. She's wonderful with babies. If they're crying, they stop just by looking at her." Michael and I were astonished, a 9-year-old girl already so accomplished. On one hand, I was pleased to know she would be a tremendous help in our home. On the other hand, it saddened me. A child shouldn't bear such responsibility. But at that moment, I focused only on the positive aspects. I would give Emma a better life, help Jennifer, and have assistance with Ethan. It seemed like an arrangement with no downsides. Emma gathered her few belongings in a small bag. She didn't have much, just some clothes and a patched teddy bear. When the time came to leave, she hugged her mother, grandfather, and little siblings tightly and cried profusely. On the journey home, Emma sat quietly in the back seat. Occasionally, I would check the rearview mirror and see her gazing out the window, her large eyes filled with a mixture of curiosity and fear. When we arrived at the apartment, I watched Emma's eyes widen in amazement. Just imagine a girl who had never left that small Georgia town suddenly finding herself in such a tall building. We lived on the 6th floor, but the building stood 22 stories high, a veritable monument of concrete and glass, as they said in those days. The little one was awestruck by the elevator. Understandably so for someone only familiar with stairs, that self-propelled metal box seemed almost magical. I remember it vividly. She clutched my skirt when the elevator began moving. Poor thing. She trembled like a leaf. But the true spectacle occurred when we entered the apartment. The moment she saw the ocean view through the living room window, tears welled in her eyes. They weren't tears of sadness. They were expressions of pure emotion. That endless blue expanse, the waves breaking on the sand, it was breathtaking, even for those of us accustomed to it. At that moment, my maternal instincts took over. I embraced the girl and said, "Emma, my dear, if you'd like, I'll take you to see the ocean up close. Look, even Ethan hasn't seen it yet. How about you two experience it together for the first time?" Her eyes sparkled. She could only nod in agreement. She was too overcome with emotion to speak. Emma's room wasn't palatial, but it contained everything a young girl needed: a comfortable bed, an attractive wardrobe, even a private bathroom. Pure luxury compared to what she was accustomed to. That same afternoon, I decided to take them both to the beach. Michael, poor dear, had to return to work. Work waits for no one. So off we went, myself, Emma, and Ethan in his stroller. You know, my dear, that afternoon I felt something unusual, a connection with Emma that defied explanation. Looking at her, I saw a beautiful girl with light brown hair, almost blonde in the sunlight, and green eye snot, the deep green of Michael's, but a softer shade, like a new spring leaf. The beach outing was delightful. Emma ran on the sand, laughed as the waves touched her feet. Little Ethan simply slept. It was a wonderful afternoon. But as all things must balance, the wind began to strengthen, the kind that cuts through clothing. I grew concerned for Ethan, still so delicate. I decided it was time to head home. That evening, exhausted from the day's activities, I prepared a quick cheese pasta for the family. Emma enjoyed my cooking. She ate heartily. As I lay in bed, sleep eluded me. Beside me, Michael snored softly, conquered by work fatigue. The sound of ocean waves drifted through the partially open window, a steady rhythm accompanying my restless thoughts. In the days that followed, I enrolled Emma in the private school near our apartment. The girl, with her wide green eyes, regarded everything with a mixture of fascination and apprehension: the new uniform, the pristine books, the well-dressed classmates. Every detail represented a new world for her. I drove her to and from school each day. At home, Emma proved incredibly helpful. At the slightest sound of Ethan's crying, she would rush to his crib, eager to assist. Her face would light up upon seeing the baby, but I, cautious, wouldn't allow her to hold him. Ethan was still very fragile, too delicate for inexperienced hands. A housekeeper visited once weekly, leaving minimal household chores for Emma. Nevertheless, the girl insisted on helping. She would carefully dust the furniture, her face furrowed in concentration. She swept the floor with a broom nearly her size, washed dishes, determined to be useful. Watching Emma perform these tasks created a lump in my throat. A child her age should be playing with dolls, running in the park, not concerning herself with household duties. But for her, these small responsibilities seemed to provide comfort, a way to feel integrated into the family. Time passed, and the little one, at age 10, began developing into a young woman earlier than I anticipated. I carefully taught her about using Tampax. The difficulty arose when the poor thing experienced a terrible embarrassment at school. Her period started unexpectedly in the classroom, staining her uniform, and some students cruelly mocked her. Additionally, she suffered severe menstrual cramps each month. Seeing that girl in such pain broke my heart. I racked my brain trying to help her. I prepared chamomile tea that my great-grandmother had sworn by, applied hot water bottles to her abdomen. Emma, poor darling, would turn pale as paper, trembling uncontrollably. I spent sleepless nights tending to her. Michael became utterly flustered with these women's issues. He wanted to help, but didn't know how. Oh, my little Ethan, what a precious sight he was, taking his first steps. Those chubby little legs, somewhat unsteady but so full of life. His small green eyes, inherited from his father, sparkled with curiosity. He was constantly touching everything, discovering the world around him. Every piece of furniture, every corner of the house, became a grand adventure for him. It was quite chaotic, but I adored watching him. That phase is so magical it makes you want to hold them close and protect them forever. Emma, so sensible for her age, impressed me with her attentiveness, always keeping a watchful eye on Ethan. "Aunt Sarah," she said one day in her serious voice, "soon Ethan will be climbing on everything. We should install window guards so he doesn't fall." It hit me like a hammer blow. I felt foolish for not having considered this myself, I who had always been so cautious about everything. But Emma was remarkably perceptive. She understood things. That very week, I arranged for window guards to be installed. Our trips to the beach became a sacred routine. It was our escape from the world. 2 or 3 times weekly, we would walk across that soft sand, feeling the gentle sea breeze. Ethan loved it. He would become absolutely delighted with the water, squealing with joy each time a wave washed over his little feet. And Emma seemed to flourish in the sunshine. Her skin developed a golden glow, her hair lightened, and her eyes appeared even greener. That girl was transforming before my very eyes. One night, as I was finishing in the kitchen, I heard a muffled sob coming from Emma's room. It was that quiet crying, as if she were trying to hide it from everyone, not wanting to disturb. My chest tightened immediately. I set aside the dish towel and went to her. When I opened the door, I saw the poor girl curled up on her bed, eyes swollen from crying. I asked what had happened, and she, with that sad little voice, said she was desperately homesick for her mother and everyone back home. Ah, my heart grew heavy. I knew that no matter how well we cared for her, a mother's love is irreplaceable. I sat on the edge of her bed and stroked her hair, trying to comfort her. I gently told her that the following weekend we could visit Jennifer. I thought that would help. I saw a glimmer of hope in her eyes, but the tears remained, caught in her throat. I understood it wasn't easy for her. Away from her mother, siblings, and grandfather, but I was doing what I could. I promised we would see her mother soon, and she attempted a smile despite her heavy heart. That weekend, we kept our promise. We put Emma in the car and drove to Jennifer's house. Upon arrival, the girl couldn't even wait. She ran to her mother and threw herself into her arms. They embraced so tightly, crying as if the world had momentarily stopped. It was beautiful to witness. My heart filled with emotion, a mixture of relief and, I must admit, a touch of jealousy. It was their bond, that mother-daughter connection that even distance cannot break. Jennifer, bless her, greeted me with a smile and a tight hug. She told me that life had improved considerably since we began sending monthly support. Emma's siblings were well cared for, eating properly. They were adorable, running around the house full of energy. I was pleased to see that at least things were easier for Jennifer. She explained that she was managing to keep the house in order, that they no longer experienced the difficulties of before. Her husband, Jason, was working steadily. Seeing this brought me peace, knowing that somehow I was helping this family, even from a distance, eased my heart. But simultaneously, I recognized that Emma's longing for her mother wouldn't easily disappear. Her embrace with Jennifer told me everything. The girl needed that close maternal love, and we had to find a way to balance it all. Emma was always such a beloved child. She formed close friendships. The girls were constantly together, coming and going. They would visit our home, creating a wonderful commotion. Their laughter filled the house. It was beautiful to observe. Sometimes the girls would even stay overnight. They would all sleep together in Emma's room, the night filled with laughter and hushed conversations until late hours. I felt happy seeing Emma surrounded by friends, so at ease. It seemed like a peaceful phase. She was thriving in school. It couldn't have been better. Emma consistently earned excellent grades. She was studious. The teachers frequently praised her. I was immensely proud of her, as was Michael. He would tell everyone how well the girl performed academically, how dedicated she was. I opened the door slowly, my heart in my throat, and what I saw, my God, was the most disturbing scene I had ever encountered in my entire life. There they were, Michael and Emma, engaged in an intimate act. There was no denying what my eyes beheld. I was paralyzed. The shock was so profound that I felt the ground disappear beneath me. That man I had entrusted with my life, the father of my son, was there with the girl I had raised as a daughter. And the worst part, dear, the worst was seeing that it wasn't forced. Emma appeared fully involved, seemingly enjoying it. It was consensual, and that was the final blow. In that moment, I understood what was happening. A profound betrayal taking place right under my own roof. The two were so startled when they saw me at the door. Emma's eyes widened, and Michael, terrified, gently pushed her away, stammering, "Sorry, Sarah. I'm sorry." It felt like a knife through my heart. And Emma, the girl I had loved so dearly, the one I viewed as a daughter, uttered, "I'm sorry, Aunt," with a remorseful expression that didn't convince me. In that moment, I no longer knew what to think. Who were these people before me? I turned away, filled with disgust and rage, and said without looking back, "Finish what you're doing." I left the bathroom with my heart shattered. I went directly to the wardrobe, unsure how to. My hands were trembling, my head spinning. I could barely breathe. But I knew I couldn't remain in that house another minute. My entire life had collapsed all at once. I began frantically packing my bags, throwing clothes inside without thinking, my hands shaking. All I wanted was to vanish, to collect Ethan from daycare and go far away. My mind couldn't process what had just occurred. Michael and Emma, the man I loved, the girl I had nurtured, how had I been so blind? The pain was unbearable, but I couldn't cry, not there, not in front of them. I needed to leave before my world completely disintegrated. While I was gathering my things, Michael followed me, wrapped in a towel, wearing the most shameless expression imaginable. "Sarah, please don't make any hasty decisions," he said, as if that would calm me, as if that would erase what I had just witnessed. He was attempting to speak calmly, but I could hear the desperation in his voice. He wanted me to think rationally, as if I could forgive that, as if I could forget. But I simply couldn't believe what was happening. With each word he spoke, it felt like my head would explode. I looked at him, and no longer saw the man I had loved, the father of Ethan, my husband. I saw only a traitor, a monster. How could he do this to me, to Emma? How could he destroy our lives like this, right before my eyes, without shame, without remorse? I finished closing the suitcases, my hands still trembling, my mind racing, and at that moment, I knew I couldn't stay there any longer. Suddenly, it dawned on me that Emma was pregnant with Michael's child. I've always been somewhat slow to put things together. That must be why I never suspected anything before. It had all been right in front of me, and I hadn't seen it. Before leaving, as I passed through the hallway, Emma's door was open, and I decided to enter. She was already dressed, crying like a small child. I wanted to slap that treacherous girl across the face, but I restrained myself. I took a deep breath and asked how long she had been sleeping with my husband. Sobbing, she said, "Auntie, it hasn't been long." That made my blood boil. I shouted at her, "Auntie, don't call me that. I took you in and this is how you repay me?" I didn't even recognize my own voice, I was so angry. Emma fell to her knees as if she'd been shot. "I love Michael," she said. "We were going to tell you." Those words were like daggers in my chest, each syllable more painful than the last. That's when that scoundrel Michael appeared. He said they were indeed going to tell me, but neither had the courage. He claimed he had fallen in love with Emma without realizing it. Before he knew it, he had grown close to her, and it was mutual. I stood there listening to those flimsy excuses. My world was crumbling, and they were talking about love, about passion. What kind of feeling was this that destroyed an entire family? Michael, with that guilty dog face, tried to explain further. He said they hadn't planned any of this, that it just happened, as if that justified anything, as if that erased the betrayal, the lies. I looked at Emma, that girl I had raised as a daughter, and at Michael, the man I had loved for so many years. I no longer recognized either of them. They were strangers to me now. At that moment, I felt the weight of all those years. But now, if I tell you what happened next, you wouldn't believe it was so absurd. I was heading toward the door with my suitcase, determined to collect little Ethan from daycare. But then Michael, that shameless man, ran to the door and prevented me from leaving. He had the audacity to say, "No, you're not leaving. I'll leave and take Emma with me. You stay here with our son until you calm down." Can you believe such a thing? I was open-mouthed, unable to believe what I was hearing. Michael wanting to take Emma as if she were some prize, and I was left. At that moment, I felt a rage I had never experienced before. I looked him directly in the eyes and said with a voice that didn't even sound like my own, "Then I'll go get Ethan, and when I return, I don't want anyone here, no one. Do you hear me?" Michael stood there, staring at me as if he didn't recognize me anymore. That wretched Emma was in a corner, crying softly, but at that moment I couldn't feel sorry for either of them. I left, slamming the door. I think all the neighbors heard the commotion. My head was spinning wildly. How had my life turned upside down like this in the blink of an eye? On the way to the daycare, the tears finally came. I cried like a child, driving like a madwoman. I was just thinking about my son, about the life we would have from then on. I arrived at the daycare completely disheveled, my eyes swollen. The teacher looked at me, alarmed, but I didn't care. I just wanted to take my son and disappear from there, disappear from that city, from that life that was no longer mine. The problem was that when I was in the car with Ethan, I felt lost. I was afraid to go back to the apartment, so I decided to go to my mother's house. I needed someone to confide in. It would be late when I arrived. Her house was truly very far from the beach. I had a lot of time to think during the journey. I began to recall our trips to the beach, and then it occurred to me that Michael, from behind those sunglasses, had been watching Emma in her bikini. But I never thought it was with that kind of gaze, you know. It seemed he was like a father. I don't know. I didn't know what to think anymore. Various memories came to me when he would drive her to school, the two of them often going alone when I would go out and they would stay at home. So yes, they had their opportunities, created by me, perhaps, but I really didn't imagine it. Emma had a beautiful young body, the skin, the hair, and the beautiful smile. Yes, she had become a beautiful girl, and certainly, Michael had fallen in love. Was he taking responsibility for her pregnancy? And that performance he put on when he discovered she was pregnant? Honestly, there were too many questions for my mind, which was already exploding with pain. The more I thought, the more confused I became. How did I not see any of this before? How was I so blind? I looked at little Ethan sleeping in the back seat, and my heart tightened. How was I going to explain all this to him one day? How were we going to continue life after something like this? When I finally arrived at my mother's house, it was already late at night. I knocked on the door with my heart in my hand, Ethan in my arms, not knowing how I was going to tell her everything. My mother opened the door, and just by looking at my face, she already knew something serious had happened. She hugged me tightly without saying anything, and at that moment, I broke down. I cried like I had never cried before. My father and my brothers heard everything, open-mouthed. They couldn't believe what was happening. For them, Emma was still a child, you know. We stayed there, racking our brains to figure out how to tell Jennifer, my cousin, Emma's mother. What a situation. And there I was, having to manage alone with little Ethan. Now, I was a single mother. My mother, bless her, arranged a little corner for us to sleep. It seemed like I had gone back in time, sleeping at my parents' house again. The next day my mother, father, and I went to Jennifer's house. When she saw us without Emma, she turned white as wax. At first, poor thing, she thought something terrible had happened. Imagine the shock. After I said Emma was fine, Jennifer calmed down a bit. Uncle Frank was also there, listening to everything with that stern face of his. I told them what had happened, slowly, choosing my words, but there was no way to soften it. The two were shocked. They couldn't believe what the girl had done. Uncle Frank, with that rough way of his, couldn't contain himself. He hit the table hard and burst out, "What shamelessness is this? She's lost her way in life, just like you, Jennifer." His voice came out hoarse, full of anger and disappointment. Jennifer, poor thing, lowered her head. You could see those words cut deep. The uncle continued grumbling, talking about how the women in the family had no sense. I stood there not really knowing what to say, watching that sad scene unfold. The tension was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Uncle Frank was pacing back and forth, snorting like an angry bull. Jennifer, quiet in a corner, seemed like she wanted to disappear. And to make matters worse, she was going to be a grandmother. Jennifer stayed there not knowing what to say. It was too much for her to process the girl she had entrusted to us, pregnant by my husband. Jennifer started crying, saying it was her fault, that she shouldn't have let Emma come live with us. I tried to comfort her, but I didn't even know what to say. Everyone was lost in that confusion. Well, what I know is that I didn't have the courage to go back to the apartment. I decided to stay at my parents' house for a while. My heart was broken, and they were my safe harbor. I couldn't even think about entering that apartment again. I hired a lawyer, one of those who handles divorces. He contacted Michael, that scoundrel, and what I discovered left me jaw-dropped. You can't even imagine. Michael, that shameless one, asked me for a divorce. But that's not all. He wanted to marry Emma. He said he was going to take responsibility for her child and everything. I was shocked. And there's more since I didn't go back to the apartment. The two were living there as lovers, in my house, in my bed. Oh, my child, the hatred I felt. It seemed like I was going to explode. Time passed, and I ended up signing the divorce papers. What else could I do? We divided our assets. I actually had a little money, thank God, but I was there, a mother starting from scratch. You know what's saddest? Seeing everything you built in life go down the drain like that, so many years of marriage, so much love thrown away. And why? Because of a girl? At first, I could only feel anger toward her, but after a while, I started to think more clearly. The truth is that the scoundrel was him, Michael. He was the one who should have behaved properly, isn't that right? He was the adult in the story, the married one. I kept thinking if it hadn't been with Emma, he would have been with someone else. It was shamelessness, really. When a man wants to misbehave, he finds an excuse for everything. Emma, poor thing, was just a girl. He took advantage of her innocence. I'm not saying she doesn't have blame, but he was the responsible one. Sometimes I would imagine how it would have been if I had noticed earlier, if I had come home earlier someday, or if someone had told me. But it doesn't help to think about what could have been. What's past is past. Now was the time to look forward, to take care of my little Ethan. What happened next was that I bought a small house for us in my mother's city, in a nearby neighborhood. It was modest, but it was ours, a little haven just for us. I found a job in an office nearby. At first, it was difficult, everything new, me alone with Ethan. But gradually, I got used to it, got the hang of things. Surprisingly, my former in-laws contacted me one day. They offered one of their good houses in the city. They said they were going to put it in Ethan's name. I was a bit suspicious at first, but I ended up accepting. I thought, it's for my son's future. But I made it very clear that we weren't going to live there. It was just for Ethan when he grew up. Richard and Barbara would always come to see Ethan. It was quite a celebration each time. They would bring presents, spoil the boy. There was no one who could match their doting. But I made a deal with them never to tell me anything about Michael. I didn't want to know about his life, nor did I want him to know about mine. It was better that way, a turned page. Between us, I did have curiosity, but I never revealed it to them. But then, in one of their visits, Richard and Barbara surprised me. The two, with that formal manner of theirs, called me to talk privately. I thought, here comes trouble. But not at all. They told me eye to eye that what their son did was very wrong. Imagine Richard, with that deep voice of his, said, "My daughter, Michael disappointed us. What he did is unforgivable." And Barbara, holding my hand, added, "Dear, you have all our support. Ethan is our grandson, and you will always be family." I was open-mouthed, you know. Those two whom I thought were so full of themselves, so distant, giving me support. I confess I was moved. They even offered to help more with Ethan. At that moment, I saw that I had misjudged them. Behind all that formal exterior, they had good hearts. I left that conversation feeling lighter. Knowing that I had their support, that they didn't blame me, was a relief. And for Ethan, having his grandparents around was a blessing. They could provide what I alone couldn't relief. It was good to see that even after everything, there were still good people on our side. You know what's funny? Ethan ended up seeing his grandparents more than his own father. Michael disappeared from our lives. He would occasionally show his face, but the grandparents were constant. They would come on weekends, take Ethan for outings. Sometimes I would have a heavy heart, wondering if it was right, but I saw the joy of my son and let it be. Over time, I came to terms with my situation. Life goes on. She was on the right path. I envisioned a bright future for her, full of opportunities. I had returned to work at the office. Michael had managed to secure a position for me there again. It was exhausting, I won't deny. Ethan attended a private daycare, a bright boy brimming with energy. Leaving him there broke my heart, but I knew it was for his benefit. We managed as best we could. The routine was demanding, but life continued. Early each morning, I would drop Ethan at school, then head to work. Despite everything, Emma was deeply loved by all of us. I cherished that girl as if she were my own daughter. Michael also seemed very fond of her. And Ethan? He was absolutely inseparable from Emma. The two were thick as thieves. I knew our home was filled with love. Oh dear, those of us who are mothers or care for children always notice the changes. I observed Emma growing, her body changing. At 13, she was no longer that skinny little girl running around the house. Time was shaping her. Her hips widened, her face became more defined, taking on the appearance of a young woman. Naturally, I regarded all this with affection, but also with some concern. Yet never would I have expected what happened. One afternoon, I noticed Emma looking nauseated, quiet, different. Something seemed wrong. I asked what was troubling her, and she awkwardly told me that her period was late by a month. "Aunt Sarah," she said, with that look of someone who didn't understand what was happening. Oh my heart jumped. I became extremely worried. There's no way to avoid thinking the worst, if you know what I mean. I asked directly, "Emma, my child, is there something you need to tell me? Are you pregnant? Is that it?" She remained silent, lowered her head, and I knew. That knot in my chest. Anyone who raises a girl never wants to face this, especially at such a young age. I asked, somewhat in shock, "But whose child is this, Emma? Who is the father?" And she, with a guilty expression, said it was a friend from school, but she refused to reveal the boy's name. "What do you mean, a friend from school?" I asked, confused. But Emma just kept repeating that she couldn't say who it was. That left me utterly lost. I didn't know what to do. A 13-year-old girl pregnant and unwilling to identify the father. How does one handle something like this? So, having no alternative, I went to speak with Michael. I thought Michael would be concerned. Of course, who wouldn't be? But when I told him the shock he displayed, I had never seen Michael react that way. He turned pale, as if he'd been struck. His eyes widened, his breathing became labored. His shock made me even more nervous. He had always been so steady, never easily shaken, but this time was different. Suddenly, Michael became furiosa rage. I hadn't anticipated pacing the room, pounding his fist on the table. "Emma pregnant? This is unacceptable." I, already frightened, grew even more alarmed. He said he would speak with her and stormed to her room, seething with anger. But then something happened that puzzled me. He entered Emma's room and began scolding her, saying she had been irresponsible, that she shouldn't have allowed herself to be carried away like that. But what struck me as odd was that he didn't demand to know who the father was. He didn't insist, didn't seem concerned with learning the name of this supposed school friend. That bothered me tremendously. I went to bed with nagging suspicions. Something wasn't right. Now, what happened next, you won't believe. Oh my God, it was the worst day of my life. I was still trying to process the news of Emma's pregnancy, and that week I had arranged for us to visit the hospital to begin her prenatal care. My heart was heavy, just thinking about how to tell Jennifer, her mother. How would I explain that I had allowed her 13-year-old daughter to become pregnant? I knew Jennifer would blame me, judge me, and in a way, I already felt guilty. That afternoon, I left work early. I wanted to organize some documents, gather Emma's things, and figure out how to resolve everything. I arrived home thinking about the day's hustle and bustle, but as soon as I entered the apartment, something strange struck me. I heard muffled laughter, conversations, an atmosphere of excitement, but then came an awkward silence. The sound was coming from my bedroom. My heart raced in a way I cannot even describe. It was a tightness, an anguish. I walked slowly, step by step, trying to understand what was happening. With each step I took, the sensation that something was terribly wrong intensified. The silence was so heavy, it suffocated me. When I approached the door, I realized the sound was coming from the bathroom. Standing there, I felt a chill down my spine, unlike anything I'd ever experienced before. My body seemed to know what my eyes had yet to witness. I opened the door slowly, my heart in my throat, And what I saw, my God, was the most disturbing scene I had ever encountered in my entire life. There they were, Michael and Emma, engaged in an intimate act. There was no denying what my eyes beheld. I was paralyzed. The shock was so profound that I felt the ground disappear beneath me. That man I had entrusted with my life, the father of my son, was there with the girl I had raised as a daughter. And the worst part, dear? The worst was seeing that it wasn't forced. Emma appeared fully involved, seemingly enjoying it. It was consensual, and that was the final blow. In that moment, I understood what was happening. A profound betrayal taking place right under my own roof. The two were so startled when they saw me at the door. Emma's eyes widened, and Michael, terrified, gently pushed her away, stammering, "Sorry, Sarah, I'm sorry." It felt like a knife through my heart. And Emma, the girl I had loved so dearly, the one I viewed as a daughter, uttered, "I'm sorry, Aunt," with a remorseful expression that didn't convince me. In that moment, I no longer knew what to think. Who were these people before me? I turned away, filled with disgust and rage, and said without looking back, "Finish what you're doing." I left the bathroom with my heart shattered. I went directly to the wardrobe, unsure how to. My hands were trembling, my head spinning. I could barely breathe. But I knew I couldn't remain in that house another minute. My entire life had collapsed all at once. I began frantically packing my bags, throwing clothes inside without thinking, my hands shaking. All I wanted was to vanish, to collect Ethan from daycare, and go far away. My mind couldn't process what had just occurred. Michael and Emma, the man I loved, the girl I had nurtured, how had I been so blind? The pain was unbearable, but I couldn't cry, not there, not in front of them. I needed to leave before my world completely disintegrated. While I was gathering my things, Michael followed me, wrapped in a towel, wearing the most shameless expression imaginable. "Sarah, please don't make any hasty decisions," he said, as if that would calm me, as if that would erase what I had just witnessed. He was attempting to speak calmly, but I could hear the desperation in his voice. He wanted me to think rationally, as if I could forgive that, as if I could forget. But I simply couldn't believe what was happening. With each word he spoke, it felt like my head would explode. I looked at him and no longer saw the man I had loved, the father of Ethan, my husband. I saw only a traitor, a monster. How could he do this to me, to Emma? How could he destroy our lives like this, right before my eyes, without shame, without remorse? I finished closing the suitcases, my hands still trembling, my mind racing, and at that moment, I knew I couldn't stay there any longer. Suddenly, it dawned on me that Emma was pregnant with Michael's child. I've always been somewhat slow to put things together. That must be why I never suspected anything before. It had all been right in front of me, and I hadn't seen it. Before leaving, as I passed through the hallway, Emma's door was open, and I decided to enter. She was already dressed, crying like a small child. I wanted to slap that treacherous girl across the face, but I restrained myself. I took a deep breath and asked how long she had been sleeping with my husband. Sobbing, she said, "Auntie, it hasn't been long." That made my blood boil. I shouted at her, "Auntie, don't call me that. I took you in, and this is how you repay me?" I didn't even recognize my own voice, I was so angry. Emma fell to her knees as if she'd been shot. "I love Michael," she said. "We were going to tell you." Those words were like daggers in my chest, each syllable more painful than the last. That's when that scoundrel Michael appeared. He said they were indeed going to tell me, but neither had the courage. He claimed he had fallen in love with Emma without realizing it. Before he knew it, he had grown close to her, and it was mutual. I stood there listening to those flimsy excuses. My world was crumbling, and they were talking about love, about passion. What kind of feeling was this that destroyed an entire family? Michael, with that guilty dog face, tried to explain further. He said they hadn't planned any of this, that it just happened, as if that justified anything, as if that erased the betrayal, the lies. I looked at Emma, that girl I had raised as a daughter, and at Michael, the man I had loved for so many years. I no longer recognized either of them. They were strangers to me now. At that moment, I felt the weight of all those years. But now, if I tell you what happened next, you wouldn't believe it was so absurd. I was heading toward the door with my suitcase, determined to collect little Ethan from daycare. But then Michael, that shameless man, ran to the door and prevented me from leaving. He had the audacity to say, "No, you're not leaving." When Ethan was 11 years old, something unexpected happened. I became involved with his school teacher, David. He was a widower with 2 small children, Olivia and Noah. David and I grew close, and surprisingly, I fell in love again. Who would have thought, after all I went through? We ended up moving in together. We went to his house, which was larger, and I rented mine out. His children were darlings, very well behaved. They got along wonderfully with Ethan. It was beautiful to see them playing together, laughing. It seemed like life was giving us a second chance. And then, to complete our happiness, we had our little Princess Sophie. Oh, what joy that was. Ethan was all silly with his little sister, and my stepchildren too. It was quite a family. David was such a different man from Michael. He treated Ethan as if he were his own son, and I loved his children as if they were mine. We formed a genuine family. Of course, it had its challenges. Raising 4 children is no simple task. But we helped each other, supported one another. Recently, now elderly, I was walking with my little granddaughter Lily at the mall. You won't believe what happened. I spotted Michael and Emma. I don't think they even recognized me. They were with a mischievous child, completely focused on the little one. Must be a grandchild of theirs, I suppose. Emma looked beautiful, very elegant, and he was also well preserved. He didn't even look like he was 16 years older than her. It was because of their green eyes that I recognized them, and also because of that mole that Emma had on her left arm. Some things we never forget. Just imagine their affair was serious after all. They stayed together all these years. Who would have thought? I confess I didn't feel very comfortable seeing them. I was a bit disturbed. Many memories started rushing through my head. I stood there, looking at them from a distance. I remembered everything I went through, how I suffered. But you know what else? I also remembered how I overcame it, how I rebuilt my life. I looked at my granddaughter, and suddenly, my heart felt lighter. I thought of Ethan, of my other children, of everything that had happened, and I forgave. No more resentment, no more sorrow. Life is short, my dear. Carrying hatred only weighs the heart down. I chose to let go, to find peace in my soul. Everyone has their own reasons, their own wounds. And each one deserves a chance to be understood and to be shown compassion. I've come to realize that the most precious thing is not the past, but the present, the moment where we can love, learn, and grow. The greatest lesson life has taught me is to never close your heart. Love more, forgive more, and live each moment to the fullest. If this story touched you, even just a little, I hope you live with gratitude and an open heart. And if you'd like to hear more stories like this, true life experiences from grandparents and parents, don't forget to like and follow the channel. There are many precious things waiting for you to discover. Goodbye for now, my dear. If God wills it, we'll meet again. A warm hug from Grandma. Hey, do you have a moment? I'd like to share a story with you. My story, from those youthful years full of dreams but also full of stumbles. Back then, I was just 24, young, full of energy, and I thought I had everything figured out, especially the law. But later I realized there are things no school can teach you, especially when it comes to matters of the heart. My name is Elizabeth Montgomery. People used to call me Liz. In the late 1960s, being a woman in law felt like walking against the wind. It was tough. Suspicion was everywhere, and opportunities were scarce. But I didn't back down. I stepped into the profession with everything I had, believing that if I was good enough, I'd be accepted. But I soon found out that some doors didn't open because of who I was, but because of my last name, Montgomery, daughter of the well-known attorney Richard Montgomery. I'm not telling you this to complain. It's just that every fall taught me something. And if you're willing to listen, I'll keep going, so you can understand more about a journey, not just of a young female lawyer, but of a woman learning to rise from the heartbreaks that law books never warned her about.